Mackenzie, Natives in Tech. Welcome to Find Your Purpose and Put Your Gifts into Action with me, Jace Meyer. I am a Métis woman living on Lekwungen-speaking territory. I have no traditional territory of my own and have lived a nomadic life, moving 34 different homes throughout my journey here on Turtle Island. I am definitely the product of intergenerational trauma, but I choose to be the consequences of my actions. I love experiences, continuous improvement, and to challenge the status quo. And I think the reason I've been able to be successful in tech and business is because I know my why. I know my purpose, which is the gift that I want to offer to each of you. Regardless of whether or not you want to launch your own business or you are an entrepreneur working in a company and trying to be innovative and chart your path of how you would like to grow within that organization. Or perhaps you're just a human being wanting to use this time to be reflective. This workshop is really designed to help you review who you are, how you came to be, and how you can leverage your skill set, what's in your bundle, in a good way. Really, we're going to put your gifts into action. So what are our gifts? Well, I believe your gifts are the skills, the things that you can do, the knowledge, the things in your head, and the attitudes, the things in your heart that serve you joy. We are good at a lot of things, but our gifts, I think, are the things that really light us up. And like I shared about myself, I also believe that you are the consequences of your actions. You are not the product of your circumstances, but it's every choice and everything that you choose to do that really names and sets who you are in the universe. So my offer to you during our time together here at NIT is to help you define what your purpose is and give you some time to action that. It's so rare that we get the time to be reflective of ourselves. So let this be a gift to you in that way. So your choice is to maybe define your purpose for the first time, or to redefine your purpose or polish it if you've already spent time in this practice. My hope is that you tell yourself the truth, that you trust that we can hold to your truth, and that by the end of this session, you feel very confident to share your purpose with others. And the reason I hope that for you is because in my experience, when you're very clear about your why and you're very clear about your purpose, people know how to engage you in a good way. They know to call Jace for help on finding their purpose because they know that that's something that I'm very passionate about. I want to help everybody self-actualize and be the best versions of themselves. But that really took me being willing to name that out loud and to tell people often that that's something I care about. And it's what's brought me into this space today. So there are a few ways that I think that we can come to understand our purpose, and it's going to take us in a backwards look. And I want us to think about who we were when we were young, the gifts and the skills we've developed over time, and what our community asks of us. And then I'll give you a little bit of a framework to think about how to refine and clarify the language you choose when you go about defining your purpose with others. So our first exercise here together today is to think about our 7-year-old self. Now, if you're following along with a friend or family, this would be a really good moment for you to collaborate and communicate with that person or people. But if you're on your own, this might be a great time to pause the recording and grab a pen and do some journal work. Because I'm going to ask you to reflect on who you were when you were 7. And recall, how did you spend most of your time at 7? Now, if I think back to my 7-year-old self, I would have found myself in Toronto, in Ontario, in Canada, in a really big city, attending a Catholic school. Not by my choice, but that was what the military allowed us young people to do based on where we were posted and living. And I'd spent most of my time asking very hard questions of my teachers, getting in trouble for asking said questions. And when I wasn't in school, I was kind of spending all my time with neighborhood kids of all ages, bringing us together on adventures, heading out to the ravine that was behind our row housing, searching for animals and trying to clean up the area, and really trying to educate the people that I lived around about the environment around us, and really learning from lots of different people. It was a very multicultural inner city school in downtown Toronto. So I was, really trying to benefit from the diversity of my community. I was trying to build community, and I was starting to see myself as a young educator and really trying to question and understand why we were learning what we were learning and how come it was those people that got to teach us. So as a 7-year-old self, I was very curious, very challenging, very adventurous, and definitely trying to be a community builder. This is useful information because it informs my day to day now. And there is research that has been done to say the things that we did when we were 7 are very strong indicators of the things that would bring us joy in our careers later in life. But that there is a lot of intervention between being 7 and being an adult that is really designed to indoctrinate us in different ways. No thank you to our education system that has, in our particular context as Indigenous people, worked extremely hard to remove our beliefs and our cultures from us. So going back to 7 is a little bit of a reclamation process for us, to try and get back who we were before the world told us who we should be. So I want you to start there and really honor that version of yourself. Bring some love for that child self. And actually, for the remainder of our time together, just be 7. You'll stay really open and curious, and we won't have to work so hard to convince you of what's next. When you're 7, you're very open to new ideas. So, hello, 7-year-old self. Hello, 7-year-old self. And now that we're young again, and we're seeing the world for the first time, we may be able to access parts of our memories we haven't thought about in a while. And what I love about young people is they don't have a status quo mentality. They don't have a belief that things are the way they are because they should be. They're very open to new possibilities. And they'll see things that many of us as adults has accepted as normal, as unnormal, and unfair, and not right, and could be better. And I love that about our young people. I think that's why we say that our young people will guide us and lead us, is because they're willing to poke holes in what we think are really strong fabrics of our foundation. And so the second part of our purpose workshop today is to take some time to reflect on ourselves as that young person and the things that really broke our heart. So what for you was a original heartbreak? What for you was something that you saw in the world that made you upset, hurt your heart, made you uncomfortable, or you couldn't let it go? It was something that would keep you up at night or give you sweaty palms, or where you really wanted to challenge things. So for me, it was in the classroom. Again, it was in the classroom. In the classroom, I noticed that there were a lot of people missing, that none of my educators looked like me, that none of my peers understood what it meant to be a Métis Indigenous person, and never was that a point of conversation in any of the subject matter we were listening to. And that lack of diversity and that lack of role model and the lack of equity, understanding, empathy, platforming, representation, storytelling about the diversity of our community was something that really bothered me. It was something that I wanted to change. And it was one of my original heartbreaks, is that many people that I went to school with didn't see themselves reflected in the teachers or the curriculum. So that was really interesting for me to reflect on later in my career as perhaps the reason why I'm here as an educator, as an Indigenous educator, working both inside classrooms, inside nonprofit organizations, and inside industry. My career has led me to be an educator in all of those ways, receiving my bachelor's of education with distinctions from the University of Victoria, but really championing that learning in my community to ensure that we saw more inclusion of young people, women, and Indigenous folks in the areas of science, tech, engineering, and math in particular, where I've found the ability to learn science in a classroom to be really uncomfortable and missing the mark a lot. Like, how do you learn about water? By reading about it in a book. And I wanted to be a better educator and offer young people access to things that I didn't have access to. So that reflection that I was able to do in the early part of my career as to why I was in the room, why I wanted to be an educator, was really founded on that original heartbreak. And that led me to the belief that when we work on problems that deeply impact us and have for a really long time, that allows us to stay really engaged when the going gets tough. That if we're to solve problems that we don't really particularly care about, then it's really easy to throw in the towel at the end of the day or not wake up with zest in the morning to get started on the work that we have to do. And when I look to people who are unhappy in their careers, or they're not advancing, or something feels out of balance or missing in their life, often what I've observed is that they're disconnected from anything that they deeply care about, that they're not solving problems that are intractable, impacting themselves and their families or communities, and therefore they don't really feel like they're making a difference. And so the invitation is to think about what that original heartbreak was for you, and to ask yourself, am I solving for it? Am I putting good medicine into the world to relieve that ailment in any way? And perhaps if not, why not? What's prevented me from getting there? And there's a lot of reasons that might be true for us. I know that there are some heartbreaks that I've experienced in my world firsthand that would be too much for me to focus on a daily basis. It's too much trauma. So right sizing the problem in a way that feels good to you is also important. And so in doing a lot of coaching with entrepreneurs who are working in spaces where they've experienced deep pain and trauma themselves, sometimes the hurdle is overcoming that pain and that heartbreak, and really focusing back on the things that brought them joy when they were little, and infusing more of that into the work so that there's a really good balance. So you'll see that who you were at 7 and what those original heartbreaks are, coming together becomes even stronger than doing one or the other. So what was your original heartbreak? And are you working towards solving that for you or your community in the work that you're doing today? And if not, why not? What's preventing you from doing that? Or how might you be able to shift your work into that way, either by using a different lens on the work that you have today, or radically changing the work that you're doing altogether? And this brings me to the next tactic that you can use to help you find your purpose and put your gifts into action. And this is really to think about, what are your gifts? And I want to introduce you to something called a T shape. And it's something that when I look to hire folks, and when I have been looked at for hiring, this T-shape concept informed a lot of what that meant. So it means that all of us have stuff that we're really good at. We could go really deep into one area of work. That might be education for me. But we also have things that we're all right at, many, many things perhaps that we're also decent at. And that forms kind of that superficial, horizontal line that we see in the T. And the vertical line is that really, really deep knowledge. Maybe that's what you got your degree in. Maybe that's your teachings that you've been gifted and that are understood in the core of your being, where you can connect with your ancestors. And the stuff on the top is maybe the stuff that's newer to you, that you're integrating into your life in new ways. Often they sometimes look like passions and hobbies versus like deep skill sets. But what's so true is that the collection of those things, the horizontal and the vertical part of who you are, is far more interesting and fascinating than just one segment of that. And so often in traditional work environments, folks are only interested in that vertical, really deep knowing of what you know. Might be the skills that you might see traditionally on a resume or CV, you know. But when something comes up uniquely, and maybe we're engaging in a cultural way or in community or communication, and we're up against something we've never been met before, what we look for isn't just those deep skill sets. It's like, what else do you know that you can bring to this situation that can support that situation? And so many of us rather have been taught to ignore those passions and hobbies unless we have a degree in them. They're not valid or worthy enough to be considered. But I'd like for us to scrap that thinking, because we are much more interesting and holistic human beings than just what might end up on our resume. So if you were to use your journal now and draw yourself a horizontal line and a vertical line, what skills might go down that vertical? And then, with way more fun and passion and energy, what might also go across that top? And how can we start to shape our narrative about who we are that's holistic of all of those things, especially when we're in the workplace trying to communicate with other people about what skill sets, what knowledge areas, what perspectives we have that may be beneficial to the work that we're doing together? And how then could we show up as our whole selves? Because we are more aware of what those skill sets are. So, to give you an example, I see myself as a really resilient and creative human being. That's the product of intergenerational trauma and just growing up in this vessel and having this spirit. I also really love to teach through a place of asking questions as opposed to telling people what to think. And that inquiry-based teaching is really something I've spent a lot of time and practice informing. And anybody that knows me knows that I'm not a small thinker, but I'm a very macro, and I like to think about systems and integrated systems. So systems thinking also is something that I put into my vertical. And in my horizontal space, I see myself as an artist. I like to produce content. I'm a coach, both for entrepreneurs, but also on the basketball court. And that really is a reflection of my desire to be a community builder, to bring people together, especially diverse groups of people together, different ages of people. So that's how I would describe myself. And the real shift that happened for me was that when I started to describe myself through the work and the learnings and teachings that I've been given culturally, through my volunteer work, through the things that I learn as a member of groups and teams, and not just the things that I've been paid for, it was only then that I found I really hit my stride in my career, and people knew how to engage with me at higher levels, and I was being brought into new projects. And that's really because I was able to communicate what my skills are in a non-traditional and boring way. I started to tell my story. I started to realize that people have the capacity to hold my truth, and that when I shared my truth, people actually held it in a really beautiful way because I invited them in a beautiful way. And so the opportunity for you when you think about your T-shape is, how might I show up as a more whole person in my work? How might I better communicate all the intricacies of who I am in a way that could be honored, held, and drawn upon by those around me. So that's our third tactic in helping us find our purpose and put our gifts into action, is starting again as our 7-year-old selves and what brought us joy, focusing on our heartbreaks and what we wanted to solve in the world, and then really being clear about what our skill sets are when we think about ourselves in all the ways, as a mom, sister, auntie, friend, community member, Métis Nation member, as a member of the local community that I find myself in today. How do I show up and name all of those things? And this isn't easy. We aren't normally given time to process like this. And also, if we've been taught humility as a principle or core teaching, then sometimes, especially us women, aren't permitted to share in this way. Or we aren't permitted to share or feel safe to share in this way outside of our closer communities, our close-knit communities. And so this might be uncomfortable for you. And that's why practicing and doing this together in safe spaces like Natives in TechCon is a really great opportunity for us to reshape that narrative for our own selves and to reclaim who we are. And that can still be done with humility, but also with pride and honor. So that's the invitation for you now. And once you're done reflecting on your T shape, one of the next natural steps that I can offer to you, especially if it was difficult for you to place skills, knowledge, and attitudes into that T shape, is to reflect on what your community calls on you for. So if you're the person that everybody calls to help raise money when there is something going on in your community or in your organization, maybe you're a fundraiser. If you're the person that everybody gathers at their house, maybe you're a community builder. If they're there because you make the best moose stew, maybe you're a chef and you know your way around the kitchen. If all of the kids surround you at a gathering, maybe you're a natural auntie and you've got innate child rearing and role model skills. So really reflecting on how the community calls you in is a really great way to inform what might be difficult for you to say for yourself about your skill set. And to ask you to take this work outside of this conference, I'm going to challenge you, dare you, to engage with your elders. To go ask your elders in your context, in your community, the gifts they see in you. Sometimes our communities, mine at least, aren't always explicit about what they see. And sometimes we'll allow life to happen for you to learn. But the opportunity to actually hear that from the people you learn from and respect is a really beautiful gift for both them and you, and allows us to build different types of relationships. And this work can be incredibly healing because it also provides you with a closer safety net when things are difficult and you need to be reminded of your worth, or you're struggling through a learning moment and you're not at the part of being excellent at it, you're at the part of being not excellent at it. These elder observations and the asks of your community can remind you of your worth and your value. So the invitation, the gift or opportunity is to have a conversation with somebody that you see as an elder, that you see as a role model. Tell them you see them in this way and ask them for the reflection of your gifts at this moment in time. And tell them it's because you're trying to find your purpose and put your gifts into action. My hypothesis is that individual, or those individuals, if you are willing to stretch yourself further than just one conversation, they're going to invite you into new opportunity relatively soon by the sheer opportunity of having to be reminded about your gifts and how to engage you in a good way, that you will be further engaged. So this is another beautiful way to help put more into your bundle, is to ask others to join you in doing that. And this might also help you overcome the humility barrier of saying it for yourself. It's very difficult for many of us to say, I'm excellent at this. But how beautiful would it be if all of us were permitted and celebrated to say that more often? We would know how to engage our whole puzzle piece in a way that could help us solve intractable problems sooner, more efficiently, with more fun and joy, and yeah, with a lot more ease and celebration and honoring. And I think that's the real benefit of creating cultures of work that allow us to not compete with each other, but to know who should lead the flock when, who should take that front bird position when, and for it to be a really gentle and obvious dance, because we spend a lot of time celebrating and naming our gifts and observing one another and reflecting on how we see each other show up in beautiful ways. And then this brings me to our final tactic of helping you find your purpose and put your gifts into action, is really to answer the question, why do you do what you do? And perhaps you can use a really typical user experience design tactic of 5 whys to come up with the because. So this might be the place where things start to unlock for you for the first time. It's like, why did I become a front end developer? Why am I a UX researcher? Why am I an educator? And not because of the first answer of, it makes me a lot of money, or I feel respected by my peers when I'm in these positions, or because my parents did and I followed in their footsteps, or because, I really wanted to break a generational cycle of trauma and rewrite a narrative from my family, or because my ancestors helped instill in me through my dream world as a young person that I had a purpose in this life bigger than I knew. And when you can give yourself permission to unpack why, you get way closer to the heart of the truth. And when you start to share that with the world out loud and not just in here, you start to blow people's socks off. They're not used to someone walking into an interview and saying, I'm here because I'm a cycle breaker. I'm here to make my ancestors proud. I'm here to solve intractable problems for my family. I'm here to reclaim my connection with the land. But those really core truths are refreshing, and the world is desperate for people to be able to articulate that, put it into action, invite others into the space, the solution space, to solve with them. And it gives way more of us permission to share our stories. And I believe that storytelling and truth telling is the first step to reconciliation, and that reconciliation starts with us individuals, not us as an Indigenous community, but each individual, Indigenous and non-Indigenous. And so to really benefit, we need to know our why. And when we share that why first with people, it's so much richer. That's when I feel my richest, is when I'm in spaces that I can do my truth telling, and I'm accepted and embraced and honored and celebrated for that. And as an educator, as an entrepreneur, as a team lead, I've always wanted to nurture that type of environment. It's my purpose to create learning experiences where people can experience belonging without bounds, where they're not afraid to fail in the pursuit of self-actualization, and where they get to experience joy every day. And I can articulate that as simply and clearly as that because I've done the work to experience who I was when I was 7, and to really capture and hold on to the spirit of that 7-year-old Jace. because I've really spent some time thinking about my original heartbreaks and what I didn't see in the world and wanted to contribute to, because I know what my skill sets are and what my skill sets aren't, and where I can go fill in my T shape. And because I've asked my elders to help me understand my gifts, and I've reflected on where my community calls me into action. And then I really became clear when I gave myself permission to ask myself why 5 times. But that's my why. That's why I'm here today. That's why I run Koya Productions Incorporated, which is a educational company who's designed to amplify the knowledge of social impact creators, Indigenous entrepreneurs, and unheard youth voices, because I want to create those learning experiences, those communities of belonging, and where people can experience joy every day. And I think that Indigenous knowledge, the knowledge of our youth and social impact creators, will help us redefine our relationships with each other. End point. So, Chimiquech, for holding this space for yourself today to rethink, refine, redefine, and rearticulate your purpose, to give yourself permission to believe in the consequences of your actions and put your gifts into action, and to shout it from the rooftop and encourage everybody around you to do the same. It's been an honor to speak at Native in Tech. This is the conference I think I'll learn the most from this year, so I'm going to end my session now. Give you permission to hold some more space in your journal and self-reflection. Give you some time to walk it out of your body and go talk to people, especially if you're just streaming in on your own. And then to go listen to my cousins and my brothers and sisters who are also speaking here this year, and to deepen my learning, because there's so many beautiful topics here that I want to learn from. So again, Chimiquech, thank you very much in my language for inviting me. Mom, I hope I did you proud, and my community, I hope I did you proud. And I'm very honored to be in circle with you all today. Thank you.